Saskatchewan territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Carrie Linklater. I'm your chairperson today, and I am joined on the panel by Linda McFadden and Mr. Jeff Peich. Our city assessor is Ms. Svetlana Shavel, and our admin secretary is Kara Belshaw. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. Statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible, and as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record.
Do you swear in? Please state your name.
Svetlana Shavel.
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Please state your name. Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Ryder and Ms. Scheibel. And our first property we are going to start with is 669 Osborne Street. Whenever you are ready, Ms. Scheibel.
File number 19-3553. Roll number 12010484000. Street is 669 Osborne Street. Owner Royal Bank of Canada. We are evaluating the property as it stands on January 1st, 2020, based on the economic condition April 1st, 2018. This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only. Based on the evidence in this report and this assessor opinion, that the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2018, $1,570,000, and in that, the 2020 assessed value of $1,545,000 should be confirmed. On page 12, I have photo of subject property. 12 to 13. The subject property located at southwest corner of the city of Winnipeg. It's on southwest corner of Osborne Street and Walker Avenue. The subject site has rectangular shape of 8,981 square feet. The improvements was built in 1968 with gross floor area of 3,936,000 with assessed leasable area same 3,936 square feet. On page 2, more photo of subject properties. On page 3, my comparables. I presented 8 comparables with Google map of location is comparable below. Red dot is our subject property. We did assess subject property at $23.84 per square foot, usable area 3,936. It's my first line at subject property. My comparables located on Portridge, Kivadian, Ridgeon Avenue, Grant, Pembina, and Center Street. Altis Bank built between 1992-2016 on Grant. A lease start between 2014 to 2017. Leasable area close to subject lease. Leasable area between 3,000 square feet to 6,000 square feet. A range of rent between $23 per square foot to $45 per square foot on my comparable number 8. So our media came across $30.50. On page 4, our income approach a summary presented. This leasable area 3,936 square feet. We applied $23.84. Our potential rent around $94,000. We did apply 2% vacancy loss. We allowed for 2% not recoverable expenses that include advertising, promotion, professional fee, structure repairs, and $8 per square foot shortfall allowance per square foot to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy. 2%. Please open page 10 of my brief. The following table contains an sample of property for which actual income expense data was submitted to Assessment Taxation Department for period preceding the reference date. Our 29 comparables showed that non-recoverable expenses the media is 1.06%. We did apply 2%, that's reasonable and fair. We come back to page 4. Our overall capitalization rate 5.7%. That support on our page 6. Our city lower and highest range for suburban B area is 5.55 to 9.05. It's inside this range. Our table on page 6 and support on page 9. The following example of actual sales that took place during the reference period. Our 5 office sales buildings was have capitalization rate between 5.1% to 6.54%. We did apply 5.7. That is inside range. It's in fair. Our please open page. This building on page 14 income expenses manner presented by owner. 1415 it's owner occupied building. On page 16 it's I posted current permits. The renovation interior alteration was done in 2008. On page 17 start my comparables. First comparables on Portridge was rented to lease in 2017 for $31. On page 18, Bank on Kivadian, rent in March 2018 for $24 per square foot. On page 19, comparables on Region, built in 1982, rent in 2017 for $25 per square foot. On page 20, Another bank origin rent in 2015 for $23 per square foot. It should be upward adjustment for timing for 3 years. On page 21, two banks on Kivati, on Grand Avenue, lease in 2014-16 between $30 and $32 per square foot. On page 22, comparables on Pembina, lease in 2017 for $32 per square foot. On page 23, Center Street, lease in 2016 for $45 per square foot. So we did assess this property $23.84 per square foot, that is fair and reasonable and very well supported by my comparables. So our estimate value of subject property, $1,517,000. In that, the 2020 assessed value of $1,545,000 should be confirmed. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Reimer?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Ms. Shavel, if I understand right, the reason for the small difference in the value you're finding on your page 4 and what the department originally, what we're appealing today, what's on the roll, that small difference is due to a slight increase that you've used in the leasable area, correct? Okay, so that's just as far as context, that's the slightly, it's not a lot higher, but it's using that higher square footage. Okay. Madam Chair, I've got a few questions that I'm going to ask just to be carried forward to the remainder of the hearing so we don't have to go over it several times.
Absolutely.
So Ms. Shavel, turning initially, one of the common themes, of course, this morning relates to the 5% non-recoverable allowance. So turning briefly then to your page 10. So these percentages, and we've all of course seen this before, these percentages that the department's set forth here, that does not include any non-recoverable expense for leasing commissions, correct? That's a calculation taking out leasing commissions, as I understand it.
Yeah, near the vacancy shortfall, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And that's what I was familiar with. Okay. I'll have more to say on that in our presentation, but I will not belabor that point there. Appreciate your straightforward approach on it. So if we go to your page 2, just to be clear about the asset we're talking about, this again is going to be a common theme. This is the Royal Bank at 669 Osborne Street. It's a retail banking operation, correct? And the department, though, and it's sort of well established, the way the department has valued these retail banks, they value them within the office group and not the retail group, correct?
Yeah, it's office building for us.
Okay, I'd suggest it's a retail operation, but to be clear, the department's classified it as an office.
Yeah, because for us it's office.
Sure. So then going briefly to your page 6. So this would fall, it doesn't really fall into any category neatly. I'm going to suggest in my presentation it's retail, but if you take a look at the office then, this is a suburban B, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And suburban B between 5.55 to 9.05. Growing high.
Actually, I understand. If you go to the next two cells, though, between the 20th and 80th percentile, it's between 6.2 and 7.3, according to the department's data, correct?
I point on low and high.
Yep,
Because
no,
second column states 60% of properties.
Right,
It's
the
more
20th.
narrow range.
If I understand the chart correctly, Ms. Shavel, the 20th and 80th percentiles, that's intended using the department's methodology, granted, but the modeling, that the majority, obviously, of the properties fall into your analysis, or the department's analysis, between 6.2 and 7.3.
Yes, and my comparables on page number 9 showed between 5.1 to 6.54%.
Sure, okay, so let's
So
look.
our 5.7% inside this range.
Okay, so for sure, let's look at those comparables briefly on page 9.
And I would like to mention they are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property.
Right, and
We
that was.
just support our table number on page 6.
Okay, because certainly, Ms. Shavel, I trust we can agree that for instance, 294 Portage Avenue, this is a downtown office building with an effective year built in 1930, it's 145,000 feet. That really bears no resemblance to the subject. We can agree on that, correct?
Our subject built in 1968 with effective years built 1983 on my page 1.
Oh, sure, and it's what we're dealing with is a 6,000 square foot bank building with one level as opposed to, I guess my point, Ms. Shable, we can agree, and you've mentioned it, so I'm not going to belabor it. They're not meant to be specific, comparable specific to the subject or the properties on the docket this morning.
But it showed range.
For office
On
properties,
market, yeah.
sure, for office properties, using the department's methodology. Okay, so,
If you mention about retail, we can look at retail on page number 9 at between 3.1 to 7.4%.
indeed, I will be talking about that, and I am going to be suggesting to the board that some of these transactions are problematic. I certainly am, as you'll see, Ms. Shable, I'm suggesting retail, but I take it your answer on, I take it your answer on the office properties is it's just meant to demonstrate, in theory, the accuracy of the model. Turning then briefly to page 3. Now, I noticed that, Ms. Shable, your rental range and our rental ranges are actually remarkable. In fact, we have several comparables that are the same. The one comparable, though, that the department's listed here, the Bridgewater Center. So we can agree, this is the brand new Scotiabank located in Bridgewater, which is, of course, one of the newest in a premier residential development. And that property was actually constructed just a couple of years ago, correct?
Yeah, it's my comparable number 8. It's built 2017. Its highest rent, $45 per square foot. It's superior to subject property
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and
I
again,
just
this is...
showed range, what available.
Sure, absolutely. No, I get that. All right.
Same with 5 and 6 and bill in 2016. It's very superior to subject property.
Yeah, no,
It's
I,
range $30-32. That value assessed at $23.84. It's reasonable.
you bet. So as far as the comparability, and you mentioned it, the actual year built was 1968. The effective year built, I believe the department has, is 1983.
Yes, correct.
So then, when you look at the comparables for this property, probably comparables 2, 3, and 4 would be closest to the mark as far as comparability, correct? As far as ages and
Yes.
such. Okay.
So in this range, yeah, between 23 and 25.
Sure.
Yeah, it's our
Sure.
best support our rent.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will leave it at that, and again, as we go through, I'll just ask the previous questions asked and answered, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Peich, questions?
I do. Thank you for your presentation. I take it that all of your numbers are model-driven, including
Yes.
including the cap rate.
Yes, correct. It's everything model.
And you've emphasized a number of times this morning that you're comfortable with the cap on the subject property because it falls clearly within the range.
Yes, and,
Please,
correct.
yeah, want to expand on that? or-
Yes, I'm comfortable with this.
Okay. The range is quite large, and I've taken a sneak peek into presentations to come from you, and there's quite a divergence in the cap that you're proposing. This is quite low, 5.7. I'm wondering what the
Brilliant.
determinants are.
Cap rate.
Yeah.
It's first it's location for
Yes,
cap rate.
yes.
After it's market, what happened in
Yes.
this area, and age.
Okay.
Short.
You haven't mentioned size.
Size, because you can see my comparables, very similar size, not so big difference
Yes.
between 3 to 6,000 square feet.
Yes.
Size, it's affected too, but not so much.
It does
Like-
this, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Location mostly worse, because to deliver cap for model, we analyze all sales
Yes.
through city and through different areas, so I'm very comfortable with this cap rate for this property.
Just following on this notion of size, as far as you know, does the algorithm have a particular cutoff for similar properties of similar effective ages in similar areas? the number that seems to come to mind, and I'm going to see if this bears out this morning, sort of, is it around 5,000 square feet? And
It's,
then
it's, yeah, some 5,000 square feet, it's a range.
there
Before
seems
and
to be a
after.
bump.
Yes,
So that because this falls under 5,000 square feet, we're looking at a 5.7 cap,
yes.
as opposed to if it's over
Uh,
5,000 square feet.
Yes. And our data showed that building before 5,000 square feet, it's a small area. It's very easily buy it often because it's less price than higher leasable area building.
Okay.
That's why it's drive hybrid so low.
Oh, I see. So in this particular case, because this might be 900 square feet smaller than some other very good comparable bank,
Mhm.
it's resulting in a significantly reduced cap rate.
Yes,
So you believe 900 square feet makes that much of a difference?
and not so much square feet, most location.
Location.
Location first. In retail, this in market, we say location, location, location,
Yes.
and that's the rest, what the
Okay.
rest.
Okay. Thank you. No other questions?
Thank you.
My questions have been answered.
Okay. Ms. Schwebel, did you inspect the property, the subject property?
I've been, it was my first bank when I arrived in Winnipeg. Like customers, I didn't inspect. But I've been inside.
Okay.
I also opened my first account there because I used to live in the family.
Okay. When was that?
It was 2010.
Okay. I was just wondering if it was
I
within this
I can
cycle.
check if it was inspected. A moment from my notes. No, I don't see inspections.
Okay.
No, I don't see.
Did you choose your rent comparables on page 3?
Yes, I checked,
Okay.
yeah.
And did you have a chance to inspect any of the rent comparables?
I choose my rent comparables when you go and start the of lease.
Sorry, my question was, did you inspect the
No.
rent comparables? Okay. So you have given this property, which has an actual build of 1968, a 5.7 cap rate, has an effective age of 83, correct? Okay, so essentially it's almost 51 years old, 52 years old.
This cap rate in range between 47 to 95. It's inside, it's no changes.
Okay, so just out of curiosity then, your rent comparable number 8, 30 Center Street at Bridgewater,
Yes, it's
2017?
very- yeah,
What
yes.
cap rate would you assign that building?
I should run my, I don't know, from my, I need to check my computer, our program, because this cap rate assigned by models. It is a very new building, and it's very superior to such a property built in 2017,
Okay,
and cap rate will be lower.
so you can't look at your page 6 and determine what the cap rate might be on that?
No, because for cap rate, this will look for specific house, but what I can talk about.
Okay, so you're relying
I
on the
just,
model?
I just see what range of lease can be on market. So for very new building, it's $45, but very close to subject properties will be $23 to $25 range for this type of building. So this my comparables 2, 3, and 4. It's best support our model driving trend.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reiner, if you'd like to give us your presentation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The common themes, for the most part, that we're going to hear this morning relate to the 5% non-recoverable allowance and cap rate. I think that there are only one or perhaps two cases where we're a little different on rent, but the difference is actually, for the most part, not material. And in fact, and I had alluded to this in my questioning of Ms. Shable, for the most part, our rental comparables and our rental ranges are remarkably similar, and one would expect that when you're looking at the bank spaces. The one exception, and I asked Ms. Shable about this, and she was very forthright in her answer. The Bridgewater Center Bank, that brand new Scotia Bank, I just do not consider that in any way comparable to anything that we have on the docket this morning. That's a brand new bank in a very, very high demand new area in Bridgewater, of course. So, and again, Ms. Shable was very forthright in her comments that that's a superior location, and I would agree with that. My rental comparable range then, if we go briefly to page 6. Madam Chair, if you recall that the range suggested by Ms. Shable with the comparables she was able to produce, leaving aside the Center Street location, the rental range was between $23 a foot and $32 a foot. That is, as I say, very, very consistent with our range. We have a few less than 23, those are indices 16 to 19, but effectively the range is a whole lot, there's a whole lot more similarities than differences in the range. So again, on the market rate issue, I won't belabor it because for the most part it's either a non-issue or a very, very minor issue. So if I then briefly, because the 5% is going to be sort of its own issue, I believe then turning very, very briefly to the non-recoverable expense study, I believe everyone on this panel, and certainly Ms. Shable, has seen our presentation several times, so I don't propose to go through it in a lot of detail at all. Happy to answer any questions, but the crux of the matter is this. The department suggested there's a jurisdictional exception, and that therefore the 5% shouldn't apply. We're certainly remaining very firmly of the view that the 5% was always intended to be a non-recoverable expense allowance, primarily for 3 items. Leasing commissions being by far and away the most significant. That was my question to Ms. Shable on their data. So leasing commissions, of course, in any proper management of a property, you're going to run into those things. Some years you won't have any because you don't have to fill the space. Other years there'll be very significant costs. We've included that in our stabilized allowance, and we believe that was part of the intent. Advertising, marketing, and professional fees are the other 2 items that generally are involved with 5%. So we are suggesting this morning that the 5% certainly should be restored as the non-recoverable expense allowance has been applied in previous years, and we are applying it in our valuation. For the information of the board, and I have alluded to this, if the board is inclined to not include the 5%, the effect on cap rate is 40 points. So you can take every single cap rate that I'm going to suggest this morning and add 40 points. That is the effect of removing the 5%. And to be clear, in our capitalization rate study, it's for retail properties. I'll talk about that in a minute. But in our capitalization rate study, we have applied the 5% in every one of those cap rate calculations. So if you're removing it for these properties, you've got to remove it on our cap rate comps to compare apples to apples. And as I say, the mathematical or the mathematics of that removal results in the capitalization rate increasing by between 37 and 40 points. I'm saying 40 points as a general rule. So then briefly, if I could ask the board, Ms. Shable, to turn to page 13. So page 13 is our evaluation of the subject. And we're using a market rent of $24 again. The difference here is a slight difference in rent, but that's just because of the area being applied. I've applied 3868 square feet as it had been originally assessed using the $24 rate. All the other parameters, save and except for non-recoverables, are the same. The 2% vacancy, $8 shortfall, and 2% for other structural. And then when we get to the capitalization rate towards the bottom, we're suggesting 7%. If you recall, Madam Chair, in my questions and comments with Ms. Shable, I am suggesting this morning that for all of these properties, these are retail banks, these are not office buildings. They don't fit neatly into any category, but certainly I would suggest that they fit much more squarely into a retail category than they would into an office category. If you then turn to our page 12, the page before that, these are the retail properties that we analyzed for the purposes of our capitalization rate study. There are a total of 15 properties ranging from a low of 5.92% for the property on Kildare up to a high of 9.33% for the property on McPhillips. And the average and median is the average is right around 7%, the median is 6.89%. For the subject property, I am suggesting a rate of 7% this morning. viewing it as a retail location, which I believe would be very fair with a location such as this. So those cap rate comparables and the data underpinning it, and again, I know the board's heard the retail cap study, so I won't go through all of it in detail, but for the board's reference, if you wanted to write it down, if you start at our page 46, there's all the cap rate calculations for the properties that are listed on that chart. So the question, of course, becomes what's the best way to characterize these properties? I'm suggesting retail. If you look at the comparables that both Altus and Ms. Schabel have presented, it becomes clear why I believe it becomes clear why I'm suggesting this. So if you turn, and I'm now just briefly going to go through Ms. Schabel's brief, and again, these are comments that can be carried forward. If we go to page 17 of Ms. Schabel's brief, this is the TD Canada Trust building, and this is, of course, a significant shopping center. So this is a retail bank located on a very much larger retail site called the Westwood Village Shopping Center, and obviously this is not an office property, an office location, it's a retail property. Similarly, when you go through the other comparables, and I won't go through them all, but that's an example. When you go through the other ones, a lot of the comparables are located in strip malls. These are properties that are retail driven and retail oriented, and not driven by sort of office locations, and the subject is no exception to that. So there is a distinction, and it's not on the docket this morning, but Ms. Schabel and I actually had occasion to deal with a couple of credit union properties where there was a banking component, a retail banking component, and then very, very significant office components on the same roll. And I do recall in those properties there was two separate income streams, two separate valuations, one for the bank and one for the office, the OFS. And I would agree with that, because in those cases you've got 3- and 4-story office sections, very, very significant sections, far larger than the retail banking operation, tens of thousands of square feet, and then you've got the retail banking operation of typically between 4,000 and 6,000 feet. So in those situations, the banking operation lends itself to a separate valuation with clearly a much, much higher market rent. The retail banking operations will pay market rents that are far in excess of any suburban office users. So again, for those very reasons, I'm suggesting it fits much more neatly into the retail category, and suggesting the cap rate is 7%. Now, again, I had referred in my questioning to on page 9 of Ms. Schabel's brief, the office and retail, not comparables, but information was provided. Because I'm classifying it as a retail, I do have rebuttal evidence relating specifically to the retail properties shown on page 9. I'm not going to say anything further about the office properties other than to say I believe they're just simply not at all, they're just not relevant from my perspective, because I'm classifying this as a retail location. So, on the department's retail examples on page 9, the first transaction is 2140 McPhelps. And if you go to page 2 of our materials, you will see from the questionnaire that was returned, this was a property sale questionnaire returned to the department. This is a sale between related parties and not an arm's length open market transaction, so we did not consider that anyway indicative of a retail capitalization rate based on a transaction between arm's length parties. Then if you go to our page 3, there's two other transactions, and I'm very, very familiar with these properties. 3166 Portage and 3670 Roblin were included in the department's retail cap rates. Those two properties were part of a much larger portfolio sale. All the properties that were included in that sale are listed on our page 3, and with that much larger portfolio purchase and the total purchase price that was obviously significantly higher for all those properties, it was simply an allocation amongst all the properties. And as I say at the bottom of page 3, the IAAO standard states that portfolio sales shouldn't be used in valuation studies such as the cap rate study for the reasons presented there. So I'm not considering those to be indicative either. And so what you're left with on the department's retail examples are two properties, McLeod Avenue, which I haven't been able to find any information on. I'm a little skeptical of the 5.1% rate without knowing how the NOI was calculated. And then the other one is 1271 Jefferson at 7.4%. We actually have that in our materials as well. So we have used that comparable, and that department is calculated at 7.4%. So with all that said, I'm suggesting this morning that a capitalization rate based on the characterization of the subject at a retail location, 7% cap rate should be applied, resulting in a suggested value this morning of $1,200,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Any questions?
Yes. What's that? Please open page 10, 8, and non-recoverable expenses autos.
Okay, so we're in the non-recoverables. Okay.
On page 10, you look on this table.
Yep.
And please open page 13, hourly data.
Sorry, now, are we talking about the sick package? Okay.
It will be page 13.
So page 13 of your package?
Yes, because it's same comparables presented by Altus Group. We have our information about same comparables. It's about 2% not recoverable expenses.
So Madam Chair, on
No.
Ms. Shable's brief,
Here.
yeah,
Where?
on Ms. Shable's brief, there's two sets of numbers.
There's two sets of numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the text is numbered and then the attachments are numbered starting at 1 again, that's why there's,
Yeah, there you
there we
go.
go.
Because it's same, as we identify same comparables. So we look on both. Replicating the summary chart using the media for each sample rather than average will further illustrate that the overall percent of not recoverable expenses is inflated. I reading on page 12 about this table. The non-recoverable expenses conclusion as reported by Altus Group dropped from 5.75% to 4.78%, simply by reviewing the data using medians. Where possible, the financial statement were reviewed in the actual stabilized not recoverable expenses were calculated for each of the properties in the Altus Group study. The following table depicts average percentage I from page 7 of Altus Group. I not 7, 10, I guess. Yeah, 10 because we have different. 2020-2021 realty assessment of recoverable expenses study. A media of Altus Group of percent of EMI data for each index. So very important. Stabilized not recoverable expenses of percentage of effective gross income as determined by assessment taxation department presented on page 13 in our total media of non-recoverable expenses net of vacancy shortfall as percent of effective gross income actual 1.06%. Same table presented in my brief on page 10. Just we show 29 instead of 52. So same data provided Altus are analyzed by assessment taxation department and show it only 1.06%. So we did apply 2% on recoverable expenses. It's fair and very well supported. It's this. Next, now I have questions. Please package rebuttal for capitalization rate.
Do you want this on all the details, like this?
Everyone, because we will read together.
Right. So if you want them to apply for all of them? or-
Yeah, it will be for everyone, yeah.
Okay, so so I'll need a file copy for each one of them, that's what he's saying. So I'll need 5 more. Do you have 5 more?
Oh, nice, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, if you open page 12 of agent brief,
Page 12 of which one, sorry?
page 12 of agent brief. We can see capitalization rate with media of 6.89%.
Correct.
So on my rebuttal, I don't have page here, on second page. Same comparables was rearranged by date of sale. The Altus Group capitalization rate information implies that there has been no change in cap rate between the 2018 and 2020 assessment cycles. However, by simply arranging the data provided of chronological order and grouping them based on the assessment cycle for which they would have been available for analysis, and trend is rate begin to emerge. The following table shows the data from page 12 of Altus brief, sorted by sale date. For reference purpose, the index numbering remain consistent with the original document. Page first, sales that would have been available for analysis for 2018 general assessment. First table, we have sale date between 2014 and January 2016. It will be available for 2018 general assessment. So our media is 7.36%. Second table, sales that would have been available for analysis for 2020 general reassessment. It's sale between April 2016 to January 2018. This group of comparables showed 6.5%. With the data sorted and analyzed chronologically, a trend showing a decrease in the cap rate is evident. The sales that would have been available to the Assessment Taxation Department for 2018 general assessment showed an average cap rate 7.55 and media 7.36%. Those sales that would have been analyzed by Assessment Taxation Department for 2020 reassessments showed an average in media cap rate of 6.5%. This suggests that over the period being compared, the capitalization rate did trend downwards. This is also apparent when it's lined trend line and applied to entire data set graphically with almost a full 1% decrease in cap rate. It's about cap rate. And please, more rebuttal. It's rebuttal about rent comparables.
Just for this one.
Please open page. Page 6 of agent brief. It's agent brief and page 6. So it's same table, I just did my search. Now what I presented, so it's, if we see B and K, it's standalone bank. If we see RSC, it's property type, regional shopping center. NSC, it's neighborhood shopping center. So we have 19 comparables, but very important second lease start date. And I have, I guess I will show what I see here. So we can see that our comparables, number 5 on regional view. Original lease started in 1999, and we step up in 2017. On comparable number 6, original lease started in 2001, we step up in 2016, and in 2016 step up lease showed $26.23. On Index 7 on Pembina, it's still on bank. Lease started in 2006, and we step up on 2017, and lease showed $28 per square foot. Our comparable number 9, Regional Avenue, lease, it's a neighborhood shopping mall. Lease original start 1993. We step up in 2017. On comparable number 13, Kivatin Street. Lease original, it's bank, still on bank. Lease started 2009, we step up 2016. On comparable number 15, St. James Street, lease started 2004, we step up 2014. On Broadway, no. Yeah, it's list on Kivatin, we start in 1980, we step up in 2015, and in 2015 it's $21 per square foot. On Broadway, it's office building, we have bank there, and we start in 1977 when its building was built. We step up in 2017. Another on 18 on Henderson Highway. We started in 2001, it's neighborhood shopping mall. We step up in 2016 and leased $26.23, not $18 was provided here. And on page 19, neighborhood shopping mall, original lease are 1985. We step up in 2017. My question, is it true that time when this lease was signed was not, it was completely different market, correct?
No, you're completely wrong, actually. Ms. Schabel, every single one of the notations that you've got for these leases represents the original start date, and every single date that I've got in my chart represents a renewal. These are not step-ups. The department has, and I'm saying this outright because I've checked these, the department is misinterpreting the data, and I stand by the start dates. Now, if your question is, has the market changed, for instance, between 2014 and 2018? It has not. I'm suggesting it hasn't changed appreciably. So, Madam Chair, I'm saying this outright. I completely reject this rebuttal, the veracity of the rebuttal. I don't doubt Ms. Schabel was honest in her approach, but the department's misinterpreted the data. What happens routinely, I check whether it is a step or a lease renewal. And what very often happens when landlords are reporting these, especially when they're using one particular software program, they will show in previous years. So for instance, if you've got a 10-year initial term and it ends in 2050, what they'll show on the returns to the department prior to 2015 is that lease, that 10-year lease. What then happens in 2016 is they just push back the end date by 5 years. And there's actually a renewal in there, but because of the way it's reported, the original start date isn't changed. So I understand what's going on, but I'm suggesting that the start dates that I provided are appropriate. So to your question, Ms. Schabel, based on my start dates, which I stand by, I'm going to suggest that the rental range is very consistent between what the department's provided us, and I do not accept that there's been a whole lot of change in the market for these spaces between 2014 and 2018. To recall, I expressed a concern with Bridgewater in that particular lease. So if you've got a brand new bank in the highest demand areas, there's going to be a premium there, and that's your last rent comparable of $45. but for existing bank space and the nature of the properties we're dealing with here, I'm suggesting the rental environment hasn't changed a lot between 2014, 2015 and the reference date.
I would like to mention that all information provided listed and listed apart from income expenses mailer provided to us for 2017 years. And I put some rent per square foot where they showed us instead of 19, it's 21, 18, 26, 23. Just by looking this corrected date, range for bond between $21 per square foot to $30 per square foot.
And to be clear, the step-ups within the existing start dates I provided, I have no doubt that Ms. Shable's right. That's very, very different though than suggesting. What I'm really concerned with is the lease start dates that are presented here. I'm suggesting to the board these lease start dates are completely wrong.
It's when original bank move in. It's,
Oh, so it's not meant to be a
original.
start date, it's the original
It start
movement?
date, yes, and when this bank start to occupy this place.
Okay, well, that's different
And
again.
also, let's mention, it is true when you want to keep your customers, your tenants, you will be arrange specific lease, renewal lease, to keep this. It can be little bit lower than market rent, correct?
No, that's the market for the space. There's give and take both ways. If it's a landlord's market, they're going to seek increases. If it's a tenant's market and they've got lots of options, within the area, they're going to move if they don't like the rate they're providing. But then, sorry, Mr. Shable, I may have misinterpreted. The lease start, you're not suggesting these are the lease starts, you're suggesting these are the dates in which the bank occupied the space? Because I take no issue with that.
Yeah, when bank occupied space,
Oh, okay.
it was start lease.
Okay, no, well, yeah, for the original lease, but then it's been renewed. So, Madam Chair, if Ms. Shable's suggesting these are when the banks moved in, that's fine. I have no issue with that. So yes, I'll leave it at that then, Ms. Shable.
So, thank you, no questions.
Thank you. Do you have questions on any of the rebuttal evidence provided?
One quick question on the 5%. The larger rebuttal that Ms. Shable's presented is their standard use. So, Ms. Shable, and this is now page 13 of the text, not page 13 of the attachments.
Right.
Page 13 of the text.
Mine or yours?
Yours. So again, we've been through this several times. It's the chart that the department prepared with the yellow highlighted column.
Yeah.
Page 13, Ms. Shable, is that where you're at?
No, in my case, it's 13.
Okay.
13.
So just to be, and this is a very simple question issue, looking for instance at just index number 1 on the comments. So the departments, in the calculation of these percentages, the departments removed leasing commissions in all cases.
Yeah, it's an outpayment using stabilizing income, effective gross income, remove leasing commission,
Yep.
and
TIs, tenant improvements, yeah.
tenants improvement.
Yeah.
Significant capital cost were reported.
Right, and you understand, we're not suggesting to start taking out TIs and capital costs, so, but the core question is, the department in all of these calculations has removed leasing commissions, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and then just briefly, turning to.
Same happened on number 2.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
what was
that's-
happened, how we estimate.
Yeah, I think it's the same theme all the way through. Page 6 of the text of your brief and rebuttal brief. And just to be clear, to frame the issue, the last paragraph, it states, "We do not dispute these items, the non-recoverable items are considered non-recoverable expenses in the appraisal theory," but then moving further, what the department's position is that there's a jurisdictional exception, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Madam Chair, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peich, do you have any questions on any of the rebuttal?
Could you please just clarify your last statement, a jurisdictional issue?
Jurisdictional exception, so.
This is on page 6.
On page 6 of the department's materials,
Yeah,
okay?
okay.
The position that the department's taking is that the non-recoverable expenses are certainly valid according to appraisal theory.
Yes.
But what they're suggesting is that there's a jurisdictional exception for Manitoba. That is based upon, the way I understand the situation in municipal board case law that they've attached. But, and Mr. Peich, if you haven't gone through this, then I'll take it through with a little more detail. The crux of the issue is this. we're considering it to be, the 5% to be intended to cover non-recoverable expenses.
Yes.
The most significant leasing commissions, professional fees, and
Yes.
advertising marketing. The
Yes.
department's saying those are valid
Right.
in appraisal theory per se, but they're not for this purpose, because of what the municipal board said. What the municipal board, we remain very firmly of the view, what the municipal board said in its decisions is very different than what we're doing here. What the municipal board said is, effectively, you can't, and the term I'm sure you're familiar with, an NER, like a net effective rent, an NER calculation. The municipal board said you can't come in and start using NERs. You cannot take all these things that we're talking about, the TIs and the professional fees and the inducements, quite frankly, free rent and other inducements you're putting into a space to build it out, you can't take that off the top line. We agree with that.
Right.
We have no, that's not what we're suggesting. What we're saying is, you have to account for these expenses in a stabilized manner and to some extent, and that's the 5%.
Right.
So when you look at, and I'll just give one example, in the department's brief, and now this is on the attachment page numbers, not the text page numbers. So if you
Yeah.
go to the attachment page number 17, and this is municipal order A99026. This is one of several that the department supplied, but what it says on page 17 in the middle there, tenant inducements, the assessor did not permit any deduction for TIs. The owner's agent says it was necessary to offer TIs, tenant inducements, being leasehold improvements or money for leasehold improvements, or in some cases free rent to commence tenancy. And we're just saying, I don't agree with not including it. But then what the board says, this is the important part, on the next page, on page 18, under tenant inducements,
Yeah.
they say the board reiterates that tenant inducements, leasing commissions, and leasing incentives are not expenses which may be used to reduce income for the purpose of calculating market value. That's the top line number we're talking about. Absolutely agree. But then if you go on, if you look at page 20 of that decision,
Yes.
the 5% management, quote-unquote, management is still in there. And that's where we're coming from. We're saying, no, we're not using an NER calculation.
Right.
But we believe the 5% as the municipal board's been doing should still be included. So that's the crux of it.
Great, thank you.
I would like to make comments. By 2018, the assessment, we used 5%, but now for 2020, we don't use it. And also about tenants inducement and leasing commission, please open page 5 of my Altos not recovered expenses study, and let's look in there, which is this page.
So Ms. Shable, are you on your materials or
It's my rebuttal.
your rebuttal page 5, okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
It was on 6, now we come back to 5.
Yep.
Altos Group has included the following not recoverable expenses in their analysis: leasing commission, tenants inducement, tenants improvements allowance, and free rent. The inclusion of these not recoverable expenses and contrary to municipal board case law. There is long-standing history of municipal court order stating that this item should not be stayed as expenses. Below are 3 municipal board order indicated this. Order A-97-280. Let's look relevant fact. Tenants improvements, leasing commission, and leasing incentives are not expenses which may be used to reduce income for purpose of a calculated market value. Order number 8-99026, relevant fact. Tenants improvement, leasing commission, and leasing incentive are not expenses which may be used to reduce income for purpose of calculating market value. These EE items should not be treated as expenses. On page 6, this order A-07-A087, relevant facts. Tenant inducement, including free rent, do not reflect the market and will be given no weight in calculating of net operation income. These items are entrenched in Manitoba case law, are being irrelevant in valuation of commercial property. The Manitoba Municipal Board established under the authority of Municipal Board M240 is charged with the duty of performing function assigned to it under the Municipal Assessment Act 226. The Manitoba Municipal Board is high level of court within the provincial of Manitoba to receive and resolve property assessment appeals This
Excuse
is
me,
here.
Ms. Shable.
Just this
Ms. Shable.
relevant fact when I'm.
Sorry, I'm just gonna stop you there. We have all read these and seen these throughout this entire cycle.
Yeah.
So we definitely are taking this into consideration. So just for the expedience of time, and I understand,
That's why I
but,
picked just few pages, more important.
I'm sorry,
That's why I bring you to page 6,
yes,
5 and 6, and in the middle, that's it.
yes,
Thank you.
Because
okay.
everyone knows, but I have to pronounce.
Did you have any questions regarding the rebuttal evidence, Ms. McFadden?
I don't.
And I do not either, and now we have questions on your brief. Questions on Mr. Reiner's brief?
I think Ms. Shable already asked if I
We
could,
asked
yeah.
already.
So now
Okay,
it's kind of
sorry,
got
through
mixed
the
up there,
rebuttal, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions on
I
Mr.
have
Reiner's brief?
no other questions, thank you.
And I have no other questions.
Did you have a chance to inspect the property?
I have not, for the purposes of an inspection, no, I've been in the building in most of these buildings, but not for this
Yes.
purpose this
Okay.
morning. Yeah.
I have no further questions.
Thank you.
And I think at that, we are just going to take a brief 5 minutes
Certainly.
to, and I would like to call this hearing back to order. We are moving on to our next property, 620 Sterling Lion Parkway. And Ms. Schlegel, whenever you're ready.
File number 19-4453. Roll number is 1000-6768600. Owner Montescore Income Funds Group Inc. And Taxi Group Limited. We are volunteer property assistance of January 1st, 2020, based on the economic condition April 1st, 2018. This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only. Based on evidence in this report, it is assessor opinion that the market value of subject property as April 1st, 2018 is $2,325,000, and that the 2020 assessed value of $2,789,000 should be decreased to this amount. On page 12, subject for the earmark, 1213. The subject property is located southwest portion of the city of Winnipeg. The subject size has rectangle shape of 40,895 square feet. The improvements was built in 2014 with leasable area of 5,318 square feet. On page second two, we can see more subject photos. On page 3, same range of comparables. Subject property first line for in 2018, 5,318 square feet was assessed at $29.98. My 8 comparables on Portridge, Dividing Region, Grant, and Municipal Center Street came with me the media of $13.50. That very well support net rent. We applied for this property. All location of my comparables on Google Map below. This road there is subject property. On page 4, income approach summary. So this rent $29.98 for 5,318 square feet. Our potential rent $159,000. We did apply 2% vacancy loss, and we allowed for 2% not recoverable expenses. These expenses include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structure repairs, and shortfall allowance of $8 per square foot to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy. For this building, we did apply 6.55% capitalization rate that inside our range for suburban B office property between 5.55 to 9.05%, on more low range 20-80 percentiles at 60% of properties in range 6.2 to 7.3%. Same table support comparables on page 9 support our table on page 6. On page 10, our support of our 2% not recoverable expenses, 29 comparable showed, and the median of 1.06%. On page 14 through 25, it's our income expenses mailer provided to us from owner. On page 23, and tenants rent roll, we can see Assiniboia Credit Union, lease 9230. Could you see on page 3? So Assiniboia Credit Union lease started 2014 for 20 years until 2054 for 5,818 square feet with base rent $26.95. In 2019 will be step up with extra $2.59 every 5 years step up. More. On page 26 through page 32, it's semi-comparables, 26 on Portridge for $31. On page 27 on Kivatin, $24, but it should be upward adjustment and do it because it's old building, 1989. On page 28 on Region, old building, 1982 for $25. It should be upward adjustment for space for building, yes. On page 29, same on Region, $23. And at least should adjust 3 years because at least once in 2015, 3 years adjustment upward plus building 1993, upward adjustment, it's inferior to subject property. On page 30, our 2 bank on Grant Avenue, between $30 to $32 per square foot. On page 31 on Pembina, building in 2007 for $13 per square foot. And my last comparables on 32 on Center Street, built in 2017 and it is rent and for $45 per square foot. We did apply $29.98, it's roughly $30 per square foot. It's fair, reasonable, and very well supported by my comparables. We come back to page 4. So our estimate value of subject property, $2,325,000, and that the 2020 assessed value of $2,789,000 should be decreased to this amount. Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Reimer?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So briefly, Ms. Shable, return to your page 4 then. And I appreciate the recommendation. So what you've done is reduce the market rent in this
Correct.
calculation.
Yeah,
correct?
it was
Okay.
very high.
The 2% vacancy, the 2% non-recoverable, and the 6.55%, those are all model driven, correct?
It's model driven and plus it's one tenant's occupied building. it's no vacancy.
So those are model
But
building
we
parameters.
still apply the percent currently.
Certainly. Madam Chair, if I could ask that all the questions on cap rate, all the questions on non-recoverable, and all the questions, because the rent comps are the same, and actually there's just a wee little bit of a difference. If I could ask all that to be carried forward, and I thank you for that. Thanks.
Thank you. So you're not accepting the,
No, my values will be different.
okay, thank you. Questions?
I have no questions, they've been answered previously, thank you.
My only question relates to the 6.55 cap. For this is a 2014 building, and that's quite a lot higher than the previous building, which was much older.
Because it's driven by location on these neighborhood sales.
Okay, thank you. And I have no questions. Mr. Barner, would you
Thanks.
like to present your brief?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I'm going to cut to the heart of the issues here because it's the same comps on both sides, it's the same issue. So if I could please ask the board members, Ms. Shaver, to turn to page 13, please. And Ms. Shaver has pointed out the circumstances exactly accurately. The property subject is actually leased to Assiniboine Credit Union. The rent in place as of the reference date was $26.95 a square foot. Or actually, it was $24.95 a square foot, but then there was going to be a step, so no dispute as to any of those facts. So the difference, if you look at our page 13, pardon me, relative to Ms. Shavel's page 4, the differences are slight difference now in rent, not as certainly as pronounced as it was originally. We're suggesting $28.50, which is still higher than the contract rent in place, but we believe the $28.50 is fair. Using the same 2% allowance, the difference, of course, the non-recoverable is at 5% for all the reasons we've mentioned, and the 7% cap for all the reasons we've mentioned. One of the factors, certainly, when you're looking at cap rate, this is a much newer building, but also, of course, it's a much higher rent, which, when you start talking about these elevated and the premium rents, then the risk, of course, increases for maintaining that income stream over the long term, and we continue to believe the 7% would be fair. So the requested value this morning is $1,961,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Shaver?
Please open my rebuttal for capitalization rate.
Are you, and I'm sorry, but
No,
are
I
you
just
saying anything?
I will point about capitalization rate. We look just specific on this table. Out of the returns arranged by assessment, it will be used. When it was sold between 2016 and January 2018, it's 6.5%, not 7. That's it, it's my point.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to respond.
Okay,
And again, to be clear, no question about the math. The math is right. Again, to be clear, these cap rates that we presented and that the departments arranged are based on the inclusion of the 5% allowance. So if the 5% allowance is applied consistently, we're maintaining the 7%, but of course, if the 5% is deducted, that will have a significant effect on our cap rates and a bump, I would suggest, of about 40 points. So just if I can ask that concept to be also carried forward. Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Page,
I have
questions?
none, thank you.
And I have none.
And I have none.
Thank you.
We're moving on to 1114 Corridon Avenue, and I understand this has a non-co-op on it.
Should I present what file number before? Yeah, from the beginning.
Yep.
File number 19-1844. Roll number is 12030820100. Address is 1114 Corridon Avenue, owner DD Canada Trust. we are valuing the property as a stand of January 1st, 2020, based on economic condition of April 1st, 2018. This appeal is respect to the amount of the assessed value only. Based on evidence in this report, it is assessor opinion that the market value of subject property as April 1st, 2018, $1,603,000, and that the 2020 assessed value of $1,513,000 should be confirmed. Also, the assessor requests that the burden of proof be placed on applicant for non-cooperation, section 5.3.3b of municipal assessment cap, and if reduction in assessment be ordered, that it follows section 54, 3.2 municipal assessment act. Please open page 15 of my brief. We did send information for 2017 as years, full years in April 12, 2018 to the owner on its letters. On page 16, 17, it's instruction for completing questionnaire and legislative authority on page 17. On page 18, 19, what we sent to the owner about property income expenses questionnaire, about property and tenants. On page 20, I have record that was filled in by the owner in our in online service. Please look on annual income review, no information, it's owner occupied. On annual expense properties, how it is property maintained, no information about insurance, property administration, any utility maintenance, no information on property information. But very important, when it's owner occupied, you have to have this information, so we can really estimate operation cost and how building quality. And on page 21, we have two lines in PD Canada Trust, occupied this building size 1988, area, two different area, 3,584 and 1,991 owner occupied. So it's not compliance because we don't have useful information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Couple of questions, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Good. So Ms. Shable, to be clear then, going briefly to page 2, the department's, I gather you're suggesting the department's records indicate that no response was sent in for the 2016 calendar year, and then 2017 was incomplete, correct?
Status was incomplete.
Right, and 16 is, according to your brief, it reads as if no reply was sent in.
Yes.
Okay, and we can agree though that you had referenced your pages 20 and 21. So the reason for the incomplete descriptor is that the owner had not, because it's an owner occupier, they hadn't filled in the property expenses, correct?
Yes, very
Okay.
important annual expenses.
Sure. Were you aware that both the 2016 and 2017 replies were faxed to the department by the owner?
I was looking for 2017 to do my estimation for reference date,
Yep.
April 1st, 2018, so
So I
I
take-
just think about this year's.
Okay, but I take it your searches didn't result in finding the 2017 and 2016 replies that were faxed to the department, is that correct? All you've got is the online, what looks to be an online submission. Put it
Yeah,
that way.
because I
Okay.
didn't have fax.
All right. Thanks, Madam Chair. I'll have evidence
Yes.
to present.
Thank you. Mr. Peich?
I have no questions.
I have no questions.
Just one question. I see that you sent out the mailer, page 15 of your brief on April 12th of 2018, but you did, I'm assuming a registered mail request was not sent? Because it's not included in the brief?
We sent in April 12, 2019.
Yes, but I'm asking about the registered mail that's
No, we
sent
didn't
before
send
June.
second time. No.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like
Thanks,
to
Madam Chair.
present. thank you.
This will become, I believe, a very simple matter. So, Madam Chair, if I could turn to page 2. The crux of the matter is this: the TD Bank, actually in this case, was fully compliant for both years. I'm not sure about the department systems, and this is not a fault on Ms. Shable at all. What she's presented is the information that she could find based on online submissions. That's not, and I'm not sure who was in the organization, TD Bank that is, would have attempted that online submission. What, though, was filed for each year was actually filed by facsimile, including the property expenses. So on our page, our hand-drawn page number 1, which is page 1 of the attachment, this is the facsimile cover sheet, and it shows that it was sent to the assessment department at 986-6105, which is their fax number, and that it actually went through the fax confirmation slip showing it went through. And then turning to our hand number page 4, and this is for the 2017 calendar year. There's the submission that was filed by our client that shows again the owner-occupier, but includes the property expenses. The exact same story for 2016. So again, I don't fault Ms. Shable. I'm guessing there is some kind of administrative error as between what was showing on the online submission and what was faxed to them for both years. But certainly I'm convinced that the property, or the client in this case, has been fully compliant with the information requests, and ask that the board therefore deny the assessor's request for the penalties. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please
Questions?
open page 4. Usually when we receive this information, we have date of receiving, not just on first page, on each page should have date of receiving. I don't see any stamp.
Well,
Not
absolutely
this
not.
page, not this
Yeah.
page,
And that's the
not
point.
this page, and
Yes,
not
Ms.
this.
Yes,
Ms.
That's
Shable,
our
that's-
protocol. It should
Okay,
be
that
received.
point is made, thank you. Yes,
The
Mr. Brown.
very point being, they wouldn't have the date stamp because Ms. Shable can't find this reply in the record. Hence the reason for the fax cover sheet showing that it was sent. There was an administrative, I have no doubt, this got lost, but it didn't get lost, it got lost at the department. So don't dispute that there's no date stamp at all. If there was, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have further questions, Ms. Shable?
No.
Mr. Fitch?
Just to confirm, date sent May 2nd, 2018.
For the 2017 reply,
Yes?
yeah. And then for the 2016 reply, that is on our page 6.
Yes.
And it's not germane, Ms. Shable hasn't raised it, but I thought I'd include it all. That was sent on May 2nd, 2017.
No other questions? Thank you.
I'm just looking at the fax number.
If you go to our page 2, at the bottom of the City of Winnipeg's form, you'll see the fax number there, fax 204-986-6105.
Okay, thank you.
Because on my brief, page 21, this information submitted by the owner, because I print what we received. We have
Okay,
what
Ms.
we...
Shable, actually, sorry, it's not your time at the moment to
Okay.
speak, but thank you. Did you have further questions? Thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Reimer, did this, sorry, I know, city's brief. So this non-co-op did not come up the previous year?
For 2017, or sorry,
Yeah.
for 2016?
Yeah.
Well, I've put it in because Ms. Shable's searches showed that no reply was sent in whatsoever for 2016, and
Okay.
in fact it was. So this appears to be an issue of somebody receiving the faxes and then not getting the documents to the right people for entry and such.
Thank you, questions.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if it was asked or requested in the previous
It's really
study.
technically relevant, yeah. So, Shable, I don't know if you can, I'm just gonna redirect to you, I don't know if you can answer this, but is there one fax machine in your building?
You have normal printer can use like fax, I use all them.
I'm sorry?
Any printer in our building can use like fax.
No, but
fax
machine.
Fax machine to receive, yes, correct.
There's one. Okay, thank you. No further questions. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair?
And we're just
should-
going,
Should we leave?
actually, I think we are going to leave,
Okay.
just because it might be cooler out there. And I would like to call this hearing back to order. And we are going to deny the city the non-co-op. So Ms. Schlegel, if you'd like to present your brief.
On page 12 of my brief, a subject location map and air photos. The subject located west of portion of the city of Winnipeg. It's located on southwest corner of Caledon Avenue and Wilton Street. The subject size house is standard shape of 18,181 square feet. The improvements was built in 1987 with gross floor leasable area of 5,575 square feet. On page 2 more photos of the subject properties. I presented same comparables and 8 comparables. First line is our subject property. We did assess 5,575 square feet at $20.22. Building built in 1987, so my best comparables will be 2, 3, and 4. They show at least between 2015 2018 between $23 to $25 per square foot. So our is much lower, our rent much lower. On page 4, in home approach summary. For 5,575 square feet, we applied $20.22. Our potential rent, 140,000. We did apply vacancy loss of 2%. We allowed for 2% not recoverable expenses. That include advertising, promotion, professional fee, structure repairs, and also we allowed for shortfall, $8 per square foot, to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy. Our capitalization rate, 6.7% for the subject properties. That on page 6, it's inside our range 60 percentiles, 60% of property, 6.2 to 7.3%. Our 2% support, our capitalization rate supported is comparables, real comparables on page 9. We're looking for office property, 5.1 to 6.54%. On page 10, to support our 2% not recoverable expenses, the middle 29 comparables came across 1.06%. On page 22 through page 28, my comparables, I mentioned the comparables number 2, 3, and 4, close to the subject property. On page 23, we have Kivatin, built in 1989, rent for $24 per square foot. On page 24, on region, rent for $25 per square foot. And on page 25, on region avenue, rent for $23 per square foot. We did assess just roughly more as $20 per square foot. It's reasonable and fair for this type of property. So our estimate value of such a property was $1,603,000. In that, the 2020 assessed value of $1,513,000 should be confirmed. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Reimer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a couple. In this case, Ms. Shable, we can agree that the plan area, it's on page 1 of your materials. The plan area of the subject is 3,584 square feet, and the remainder is actually a mezzanine area of 1,991 square feet.
Correct.
Okay. Then turning briefly to your page 3, if I understood correctly, and I believe I know the answer, but those lease comparables you've got, those are all just main floor area. There's no mezzanines included in those.
Correct.
Okay. Madam Chair, if I could have all the previous
That's
questions.
why our rent $20.22, it's account for mezzanine.
Sure. If I could ask that the previous questions on non-recoverable and cap be asked and answered and carried forward, thank you.
Thank you.
And I answer carry forward too.
Thank you. Questions?
I have none, thank you.
And I have none. And I have none. If you would like to give us your presentation, Mr. Reimer?
Madam Chair, if I could go to the heart of it, to page 13, please. So the evaluation that we've applied, and I believe that the mezzanine area certainly has a significant effect here. So what you can see on our page 13 is we've applied the main floor rent of $24 a square foot based on our lease comps and a mezzanine rent of $10.25 to come in at $106,424. That was consistent with the department's original valuation for this property. Ms. Shable's got a slightly higher rent. I'd suggest the $106,424 as originally assessed was appropriate, but leave that as it may. We'll continue with that rent, then the remaining issues relate to non-recoverable and cap. So if I could ask all of those comments and the discussion be carried forward, and the request then is for $1,373,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Questions, Ms. Schlegel?
Just would like to mention about my rebuttal. So in 2020, it's 6.5%, by comparable supported by others.
Thank you. Mr. H?
I have none, thank you.
And I have none. And no questions either. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to move on to 5930 Roblin Boulevard. And whenever you're ready.
File number 19-3841, roll number 0100393900, address 5930 Robin Boulevard, owner is Sinavon Credit Union Limited. We are evaluating the property assistant of January 1st, 2020, based on economic condition April 1st, 2018. This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only, based on the evidence in this report. It is assessor opinion that the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2018, $1,292,000, and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. On page 15, you can compare a photo of subject property, 1314. The subject property located southwest portion of the city of Winnipeg. It's located on corner, southeast corner of Boardroom Boulevard and municipal road. The rhombus side, shape of property site has 18,693 square feet. Our gross leasable area of improvements that built in 1973 with addition 1992, 8,375 square feet. On page 3, more subject property photos, pictures. On page 4, our bank rent comparables. First line is our subject property and built 1978. It's a 50 years built 1978. 3,875 square feet. We did assess $19.95. It's all buildings, so my comparables number 2, 4, 3, and 4, close to the subject property, and built at least in 2015 to 2018 should be a time adjustment here. Very similar in square footage, between 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, between $23 to $25 per square foot. We did assess just less as $20 per square foot. It's fair and reasonable. On page 5, the income approach summary. Our potential rent came across 77,000. We did apply 2% model driven vacancy loss. We allowed for 2% not recoverable expenses, and also shortfall 8% with $8 per square foot to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy. Our capitalization rate 5.7%. Debt inside range of page 7. Our City of Winnipeg low and high range for suburban B offices 5.55 to 9.05%. Our table supported by real sales on page 10 between 5 comparables between 5.1% to 6.54%. We did use 5.7%, it's inside our range. 2% not recoverable expenses supported on page 11. Median of 29 comparables 1.06%. These comparables was provided to us by Altus. On page 17. In 2015 was increased ventilation of this bank. On page 18, I have with the main floor finish plan. Print is for me. You can see what inside this building. And my comparables from 19 to 25, some comparables. Best support my comparables 2, 3, 4. See? Oh no. I need to do recommendation based on evidence in this report. It's assessed opinions that the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2018, $1,292,000. And that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a couple. Ms. Shable, you referred to a permit on page 17. If you go to page 17, that permit value is $20,000, correct?
I showed permits of some alteration bank, current was in 2015,
Yep.
and same permit showed with the main floor finish plan.
Right, but the permit value, my question was, the permit value shown on page 17
Yeah,
is $20,000?
yes.
Okay. Then turning back to page 5. So if I understood you correctly, this is model-driven right from top-line revenue down to the cap rate?
Correct.
Thanks,
But
Madam.
it's very well supported by my
Sure.
comparables.
Thanks, Madam Chair. All the previous questions asked and answered on the germane issues, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Page?
I have none, thank you.
And I have none. If you'd like to give us your brief.
Page 13, please. And the issues are narrowing as we go along. So in this case, it's very simple. It's non-recoverable. As you can see, we've included the 5%, and its cap rate is 7%. So the rent we're using is actually just a touch higher than the departments would apply to $20 rate. And with the application of the primaries as shown, including the 5% non-recoverable and including the 7% cap for reasons previously submitted, we're requesting a value of $1 million this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Schimmel? Mr. Page?
I have no thank you.
And I have none.
And I have none, thank you. We move on to 60 Bison Drive. Ms. Schimmel, whenever you're ready.
File number 19-3864. Roll number 03091611400. Address is 60 Bison Drive, owner occupied Cambria Credit Union Limited. We are valuing the property as a stand of January 1st, 2020, based on economic condition April 1st, 2018. This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only. Based on evidence in this report, it is assessor opinion that the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2018 is $2,205,000 and that the 2020 assessed value should be continued. Please open page 13 of my brief, where subject location map and care photos presented. And the subject property located southwest border of the city of Winnipeg. This irregular shape of subject size has it's between Pembina Highway, Bison Highway, and Markham Road in middle. As a shape, subject site has 47,299 square feet. The improvements, one-story improvements was built in 2011. On page 3 more subject photos, property photos. On page 4, first line is our subject property. We did apply its standalone bank for 5,228,000 square feet. We did apply $28.39. That's very well supported by my 8 comparables with media of $13.50. It's for my best comparables will be comparable number 1, comparable 5, 6, 7, and 8, because it's between $13 and my comparables number 8, it's built in 2017, it's inferior, it's superior to subject property. It will be just between $30 to $32 per square foot, $31 to $32, or $30 to $32 per square foot. We did apply $28.39. It's fair and very well supported by my comparables. On page 5, income approach summary, with our $28.39 for 5,328 square feet. Our potential rent came across 151,000. We did allow 2% vacancy loss, 2% not recoverable expenses, and 8% shortfall per square foot to allow for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy. Overall capitalization rate 6.55%. That very well supported on our page 7. Here we can see the city of Winnipeg 28 percentiles and site is range. It's 60% of property, 6.2 to 7.3. Our capitalization table supported on page 10 with our 5 comparables. This capitalization rate 5.1 to 6.54%. Our 2% not recoverable expenses supported on page 11. Our total media of not recoverable expenses for 29 properties, 1.06%. On page 15, income statement. It's owner occupied, but we have all information about annual expenses for properties, occupation cost. On page 17, or through page 23, photo of my rent comparables. We already looking. So based on evidence in this report, the subject property as April 1st, 2018, 2,205,000, and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Ryman?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just briefly, Ms. Shablin, I believe you alluded to it, page 5, the valuation of the subject from top to bottom, including cap rate, is model driven, correct?
Yeah, it's model driven, but very well supported by my comparables.
Sure. Yep. Madam Chair, all the questions asked and answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Page?
Thank you, I have no.
And I have none.
And I have nothing else. Mr. Ryman, if you'd like to give us your brief.
Page 13, please. So in this case, again, it's precisely the same issues. We're suggesting the restoration of the non-recoverable expense allowance of 5%. We're suggesting a capitalization rate of 7%, as shown there, and the valuation, indicated value is $1,965,000. You'll note the common theme in the 7%, and certainly when you look at the market rent in this case, we're agreeing with the department's rent. We believe it's a fair representation for this asset. It is, of course, almost 50% higher than the previous property, but that's a function of quality and age and such. So certainly there have been significant, there's a significant difference in the market rents, but we believe it is fair for the respective assets based on quality, age, and those factors, and that the 7% cap rate would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Mr. Page?
I have no, thank you.
I have none.
I have none.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll move on to our last property at 2659 Pembina Highway.
File number 19-3832. Roll number is 030617030000. Address of highway 2659 Pembina. Owner is Lasinabon Credit Union Limited. We are valuing the property as it stands of January 1st, 2020, based on the economic condition April 1st, 2018. This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only. Based on the evidence in this report, in this assessor opinion, the market value of subject property as April 1st, 2018 is $2,527,000, and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. On page 13 of my brief, we can find subject location map in aerial photos. The subject property located southwest portion of the city of Winnipeg. The irregular shape of subject size, subject property located northwest corner of Boardroom Boulevard and Pembina Highway. The subject size has area of 69,608 square feet. The improvements, one floor improvements, building was built in 2008. This building enhances energy efficient and environmentally sustainable building. It's reported in our permits. The gross floor area and leasable area of 6,265 square feet. On page 3, more photos of subject property from Google. On page 4, I did presented 8 comparable same for previous properties. First subject line is our subject property built in 2008, 6,265 square feet. We did access at $27.67. That very well supported by my comparables with media $14.50. On page 5, income approach summary. Our potential rent for $27.67 per square foot for 6,265 square feet of leasable area. Our potential rent $173,000. We allowed for 2% not recoverable expenses, 2% of vacancy. We allow 2% not recoverable expenses and include advertising, promotion, professional fee, structure repairs, and also shortfall allowance, $8 per square foot to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy. Our capitalization rate, 6.55%. That inside range on page 7, our 60% of property, office property between 6.2% to 7.3%. We did allow 6.55%. On page 15 and 16, it's income expense mail as provided to us online. It's owner occupied. We can see annual expenses for these properties. Very well set up. And we, on page 16, you can see that the owner occupied this building from 2008. On page 17 through page 22, my rent comparables. We very well alert about it, so let's skip it. So based on evidence in this report, in this assessor opinion, that the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2018, $2,527,000, and that 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to again, Ms. Shable, page 5, that this valuation is model driven from top to bottom.
Correct, and very well supported by my comparables.
Thanks, Madam Chair. That's my question.
Thank you. Mr. French?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. McFadden?
I have none.
And I have none. Thank you. You would like to give us your brief?
Page 13, please. And yes, indeed, I will sound like a broken record. The issues are non-recoverables at 5% and capitalization rate at 7%. For the same reasons we've supplied previously, we're applying here again a market rent that's getting towards the higher end of $27.65. That reflects the quality of the asset, and for the reasons previously submitted, asking for the 7 cap and the 5% non-recoverable, resulting in a value of $2,241,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Sherman? No. Mr. Page?
I have no thanks.
And I have none.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you for your time, Mr. Reiner and Ms. Sherman. Thank you.